Alright folks, welcome in to our Saturday street stall. Waiting for people to come in to join us, and we see folk here on our Twitter. Wonderful. We're just playing some good old British rock and roll in the background. More people coming in now on Facebook because this is our Force for Good Saturday street stall. Everybody wants a piece of the action. Well, if you come to a Force for Good, satisfaction is guaranteed. Because, folks, it's Saturday. It's Scotland. It's 1 o'clock. And this is a Force for Good's Saturday street stall, coming to you live from the great British city of Glasgow. Thank you to Angus, May and Richard for giving us a wave there. Please give us a wave if you're coming in. Great to see so many on Twitter and on Facebook, because this is where we daily, weekly, monthly and yearly are sticking it to the Scot Nats until these people see clearly. Until they see clearly that we are down with the A to the AFFG. So folks, love to see you. Please give us a wave. Now, what are we going to talk about this week? The first thing we're going to talk about is SNP TV's, or should we say STV's, North Korean children's broadcast, which was a remarkable piece of propaganda which came out on Sunday, to much public dismay, that the political editor of SNP TV, euphemistically known as STV, would think it was appropriate is really quite remarkable. And I know a lot of people did not see it because such a, I suppose, Unionist furore was created that the political editor of STV took it down. So many people have not seen it, but it is still out there on Twitter if you take a deep breath and look at it. But when we saw that, we were shocked because we have seen a lot of SNP propaganda, and we do know that is a strange thing about the SNP, but they always use pictures of little children in their leaflets and in their brochures and in their propaganda, to the point where it's unseemly, to be quite frank with you. Well, they were at it again, or rather the political editors at SNP TV, otherwise known as STV, were at it again. Rita, thanks. Gordon, Alan, cheers. Good to hear from you. They were at it again, and they put together this 2-minute broadcast of little children that were probably aged between 3 and maybe 9 at the most, maybe average 6 or 7. And I'm going to read to you what they actually said, because it is totally absurd. What they did was they had a little child would say like 3 words, and the next child would say another 3 words. Robert says, save the children. Neil says, it's indoctrination. Thanks for watching, you guys. Lovely. Well, so the children would all say the few words, and then they join it all up into a little collage, which was a homage, which was genuflecting to Nicola Sturgeon. There, give Megan a wave, give Craig a wave, give Neil a wave, give Robert a wave. Thanks, folks, for coming in. So they were genuflecting, and the little children didn't know any better. Ray, there you go, and Scott. And this is what they said in a children's voice, okay? The children of Scotland would like to say thank you to Nicola, our First Minister of Scotland. We are so grateful. Thank you for always keeping us safe, working so hard for being strong for us. Thank you for caring for every individual life. Like, when was the last time you spoke to a 3-year-old and they said the word individual, let alone putting it in the context of caring for every individual life? Okay? I mean, seriously, how many roads must a man or woman walk down before you can call him or her an individual, as Bob Dylan used to sing. So thank you for caring for every individual life and for always thinking about the children of Scotland. Joseph, Colin, good guys, thanks for coming in. Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, that was just appalling, absolutely appalling. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if they did something with Boris in there? You know, the children of Scotland would like to say thank you to Boris, our Prime Minister of Scotland, which is what he is. We are so grateful. Thank you for always keeping us safe, working so hard, for being strong for us. Thank you for caring for every individual life and for always thinking about the children of Scotland. Thank you, Boris. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, would that get made? I would hope not. I would hope not, just as I would hope that the SNP STV video is confined to the depths of the ocean and lies there acting as a warning to other producers who are going to try to promote such blatant North Korean style propaganda. And that's being unfair to the North Koreans because we don't really know what goes on up there. You know, they get a bad rep, but we don't really know what's going on in North Korea. Nobody knows. So maybe they're nice guys up there. I don't know. But so I don't want to be unfair to North Korea when I say that is appalling, you know. But this is where modern Scotland, this is where we're going. And there's a lot of Scottish national people who don't see anything wrong with that. They don't think that's unseemly to use little children who are just learning to speak English and putting political words into their mouths. They don't see that as wrong. So we do have a demographic here in Scotland who does not see that as wrong. And that's worrying, and that's a concern. That's a concern for us all, but hopefully we live and we learn and we grow and we get better at it. Well, you know, I was just on the phone there to somebody before I started, and they were saying to me that, oh my goodness, this week the news has just been so tiring. It's been so tiring and just draining, tiring and draining, because the media is concentrating, as we know, on the whole Dominic Cummings thing. I'm not going to talk about that, other than to say that there does seem to be a double standard there when you've got other people who have been doing the same thing, but they haven't been being brought up on it. Obviously, maybe they're not regarded as important as what's been happening with Cummings. But leaving him aside, we now have to look to our Scottish administration for guidance upon what's happening. And you can't really get away from it. You open up the newspaper, you switch on YouTube, and you're getting bombarded with so-called Scottish government messages. Now, as you know, we don't call them the Scottish government because there's only one government in the United Kingdom. There's only one sovereign government, and that is the British government. The Scottish administration does not have the powers of a sovereign government, okay? It's a devolved arm of the British state, so it's completely wrong to call it a government, and we don't call it that, and we need to get out of the habit of saying that, and we encourage our journalists and opinion formers and so on to see the constitutional reality and to understand that it is not a government, it's an administration, it's a devolved administration, a devolved arm of the British state that created it. And that's fine, you know, that's the point of it. It was to be an arm of the British state. It wasn't to be a competitor. It wasn't to be an equal competitor. It was simply a devolved arm, the thinking being that it would enable extra representation at the Scottish or the Northern Irish or at the Welsh level to theoretically compensate for the lack of MPs in Westminster. And that could potentially work if you did not have a vociferous nationalist movement exploiting it. And that's where it all comes to the crunch, is things like devolution can work if everybody wants it to work. But if you have a strong political party who is not interested in making it work, then all they're going to do is take the powers that you've given them, take it without thanks, bank them, then pretend that they never received them, and move on to their next stage in their agenda. Frank saying the SNP is anti-UK. That's absolutely for certain. Greg saying fly the Union Jack. We certainly will, my friend. And the great Union Jack up there, created by the Scotsman King James VI when he became King of Great Britain, which we never tire of saying because we love to promote our British history. And Scotland has been so much essential there. Somebody saying there, sitting here in my Unionist home in London, watching the good guys now. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. One nation indeed. The United Kingdom is one nation. If you have any comments on Twitter, please fire them in. Any comments on Facebook as well, please fire them in. And you know, the United Kingdom has been so good to all of us during this COVID crisis. And all the money that's coming to Scotland has been created by the British government. The British government and the Treasury. Without them, we could not get through what we're doing. And you know, Scotland has received nearly £4 billion in extra spending during this crisis period, and there'll be more to come. 80% of many people's wages are being paid for by the British government. It's provided supports, it's provided grants, it's provided loans for Scottish businesses. It's provided millions of pounds of support for isolated people and for Scottish charities. And there's millions more to come, if not billions more to come. And so when you hear the Scottish administration talking about spending this money, this is British taxpayers' money, okay? This is British taxpayers' money. And whatever you may think about the rights and wrongs of the crisis, the point is that we could not get through it at this moment without being part of the United Kingdom. No part of the United Kingdom could get through this on their own. This is, if anything, this shows the value of unity and of working together and of sharing and redistributing our resources, which is such an important element of the British Union. Such an important element. And here's just a little tip for many of you who may be self-employed. If you are self-employed, you are likely to be entitled to 80% of your normal income to be paid to you. So what to do is go to gov.uk, and I have the details here. Go to gov.uk and search for Self-Employment Income Support Scheme. And it's all digitised now, and they will tell you straight away if you are eligible for any funding from the British government. And if you are, you'll get 3 months for March, April and May, and you'll get 80% of what you would have made or estimated you would have made according to your last tax assessment. And you'll get that. And it's automatic. You just press a button. So that's something to do if you're self-employed. And the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, has just announced last night that it's going to be extended for another 3 months. So that will be June, July and August. And you'll get 70%. And you'll claim for that in August. So the British Treasury has been incredibly generous to us all. But then again, I mean, they do kind of owe it in the sense that, you know, the government's brought all this upon us. But nevertheless, it's got the power to fund the money. Where it's all going to come from, we'll find out when this is all over. But for the moment, we have to be so grateful for the power of the British economy. Somebody saying there, I'm in London and it's good to hear of people like you who still believe in the United Kingdom. There are many of us up here, sir, I can assure you, we are the majority. We are just simply finding our voice. We're building our voice. We're making sure others know about us, because we have been silent for too long, and we need to find ways of making sure everybody in the United Kingdom is involved in the struggle to keep the United Kingdom together. That's so important, because we can't just do this all on our own here in Scotland. We need everybody to get involved. So if you're British, you're involved wherever you may live in the United Kingdom, and indeed wherever you may live in the world. If you care about the integrity and the unity of the United Kingdom, then pitch in, and please do get involved. Now, anybody out there hasn't given us a wave, please give us a wave. If you've got a comment, please fire it in. If you've got a question, also please fire it in. And just before I move on to the next point I want to talk about, a nice little thing has come into our office this week. We have another little badge design. There you go. It's our Union Heart flag. In other words, this up here in badge form. We're going to put the link in for that in the description below. It's presently on our shop at aforceforgood.uk. Go to that, look along the top, you see shop, click on that, you'll see this lovely wee badge. It's a real original little flag badge in enamel, gold rimmed, lovely. So yeah, we're all genuflecting. I like that word, genuflecting. I just discovered it a few days ago. Genuflecting to Nicola Sturgeon, which is basically what we're all having to do. And, you know, she's tweeting out, like today she tweets out, you're only allowed to go out now to stay at home, but if you're going to meet 3.5 people, make sure that you stay, you know, whatever, 200 centimetres away, or, you know, it's the stuff like that. And I'm like, I cannot believe I'm reading this. This is real life. This is real life. Anyway, hopefully it won't be with us for too long, and hopefully we can put this behind us and never let it happen again. We cannot be like somebody catches a sneeze, somebody coughs, and it's like shut down the country, let's find another 50 billion. We're going to have to find a new way of dealing with this, because we cannot go on like this. Anyway, because as we've been pointing out as well, this crisis has been devolved, and it's been devolved to her, and she's making the most of it. As a politician, that's entirely proper, that she should make the most of it. It's entirely to be expected that she will make the most of it. It's just as Unionists, we don't want to see her taking centre stage. We don't want to see little children genuflecting to her in videos. We don't want to see that sort of cult of the leader, which she loves, and which she's just going to continue on. And also to be able to do this as well without having to worry about where the money is coming from. Now that's a big thing, okay? She's got power without the responsibility of where the money is going to come from. As somebody said here in a letter, which I've just noticed in the Daily Telegraph, why on earth did Westminster ever legislate to give devolved administrations power to deviate from the central authority in a situation such as we now face? It is divisive and a recipe for confusion and chaos. And as we said, it was done in the Coronavirus Act 2020, Schedule 22, Part 3, which gave all powers relating to events, gatherings and premises in Scotland to the Scottish ministers, so-called. So that was a misstep, and that was a mistake, because it created a shambles, and it also created in our heads the division of the United Kingdom into 4 separate parts. It created a federalist attitude in our heads that we have to consciously fight against. As somebody says here, what a shambles removing the coronavirus lockdown has become in the UK. Each part doing its own thing at its own pace, making life impossible for those who live and work in the borders areas. The person to blame for this mess is Tony Blair, who as Prime Minister pushed through the regionalisation of the UK. And that's certainly true. Because of his actions, we have a divided country and cannot act in unison to deal with a crisis affecting us all. Well, that is what it seems like at the moment. And we have to hope that we'll learn from that, and our politicians will learn from that, because we have to stay positive in this particular regard. You know, an example is, for example, the A9, okay, which is Scotland's longest road, and which it was being upgraded to dual carriageway until the lockdown happened. And as somebody pointed out here in another letter to the newspapers, it was shut down at huge cost to the economy, even though road building is generally quite a socially distanced activity. You know, the men who are building the roads can stay in their cabs, or they can stay sufficiently far away from each other, or they can wear masks. It wasn't like a road building isn't something like it's like in an office or something like that where you have to shut it all down. So road building could have continued, and certainly the A9 could have continued, and all the money that's been lost from that lockdown is very, very serious. As the person says here, where was the risk perceived to be? The reasons must be political for Scotland to be seen to be more caring. This control is exercised by a minority authoritarian government, safe in the knowledge that the UK taxpayer will bail them out, allowing them to duck responsibility. Just what I said there, allowing them to duck responsibility. It says that somebody's coming in there on Twitter saying Australia is moving at different speeds according to the different regions. That's true, but Australia still has that governed by the Central Australian government. The states are they're still under the control of the central government. When we look at Australia, we don't think of 8 different countries. We think of simply the Australian centre, which is how it could have been in the UK as well. I mean, Boris Johnson could simply have said, look, you know, Scotland, you move at a different pace, or Northern Ireland, you move at a different pace. That's who we would want to have heard that instruction from as British Unionists. We don't want simply to see the separate parts going off in their own way as if they are self-sovereign, independent bodies. We spoke about that about two sessions ago. And one of the points that I want to make on this is that quite a few people are seeing what we're seeing. You know, they're seeing this break, this division, this breakup, and they're getting concerned about it. Somebody says there on Twitter there are plenty of outside jobs that could have continued. That's absolutely true. Plenty of them. And to imagine that you're at risk from building a road is or working on a farm or something like that, you know, it doesn't really make much sense at all. But people like ourselves say, right, how in future can we make this more unified? Because we're always looking for ever closer union within a British Unionist context. Unfortunately, some people who are quite influential in the media look at it and they say the problem is we're not sufficiently devolved yet. Now, you hear this everywhere from The Guardian to The Telegraph. There is a sort of commentator based in London. And, you know, don't get us wrong, we love commentators wherever they may be based, and many of them speak good sense and so on, but some of them don't really understand, as we've always said, how the British Union is held together. They don't understand the nature of the UK as a unitary state, that is, as one central parliament that devolves responsibility. They seem to think that we're already a separate federal country with sovereign different parliaments. Well, and so they advocate even more devolution. They advocate giving even more powers, as if that's somehow going to make any difference. It's not going to make any difference. As we keep saying, you could give the moon to the SNP and they would pretend that they never received it, and they would complain that it wasn't enough, because that's the nature of who they are. That's the nature of their political agenda. They have to keep pushing. They don't care that powers are not being exercised here or there, or that we need a little bit more democracy here, or what they care about is just breaking up the United Kingdom. That's all they're caring about, is breaking up the United Kingdom. It's not about the democratic deficit. It's about how do we destroy the UK. And so they'll never be satisfied, regardless of the number of powers that you give them. They'll never be satisfied with that. They'll just keep going on until they break up the UK. And then if they ever did that, they would most certainly not be satisfied. Because what would then happen? You'd have to have a separate English Parliament. And if you think the Scottish Nationalists are bad at the moment, complaining about the British Parliament, wait until you see them complaining about an independent English Parliament. Oh my goodness me, we'll be back to where we were, back in the old days of constant conflict. So, as we keep saying, there's no good end to the Scottish Nationalist aim to break us into 4 different parts. There's no good end. And even if they succeeded, they would not be satisfied. It would only make matters worse. You know, some well-enough meaning people come onto our page and say, well, you know, I live in England. Just give the Scots what they want. That'll shut them up. No, it won't. Oh, no, it won't. Because you don't understand the nature of that particular type of Scots person who will simply complain forevermore. Somebody saying there, the UK government should start funding Scotland directly, absolutely, over the heads of Holyrood. Because Holyrood will just take your money and it will pretend that it somehow created it, and it won't thank the British Treasury for that money. So any money coming up here has to be branded British, and it has to be spent over the heads of Holyrood. No question about that. So, no, getting back to the idea that Scots would stop complaining. Oh, no. The sort of person who complains right now will complain forevermore. That's just the nature of the person. They're just complainers. They're just grievance mongers. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you give them the moon and the sun and the stars and all the galaxies. They'll say, we never got that, and it's not enough, and we want more. And do you know what? That will be the case if the world is to last for 1,000,000 years, because that's just the nature of the person. And sometimes that's what politics is about. You just got to look at the person and go, is this person ever going to be satisfied? No. So let's just not do what they want. It's very easy to say that. It's a lot harder when words meet political reality, of course. I understand that. But this is, what I'm saying is correct. It is the truth of the matter. These people will never be satisfied. Even in an independent Scotland, they're still going to complain. And they'll find something to complain about. And if there is a powerful English Parliament, and an English Parliament will be very powerful if it ever happened, it would just dominate the British Isles to a huge extent. And the Scots, English and Welsh would not get a look in, and that would then create even more troubles that we can only wonder about at the moment, but which would be coming in such a situation. So the best way that we have found over the centuries is to have one British Parliament where we all muck in, and where the benefits of association accrue to us all, where the smaller countries can enjoy the benefit of the larger country, and the larger country can enjoy the benefits also and resources that the smaller countries are bringing to bear on the matter. And at the end of the day, everybody gets a piece of the pie. Not everybody is entirely satisfied, but everybody gets more than they would get if they all went off in 4 different directions, 4 different squabbling directions. And, you know, there was somebody in the Daily Telegraph who wrote this article. Coronavirus emergency has exposed devolution as a dangerous mess. Nick Timothy. And, you know, he's one of these guys who writes a lot of good stuff. But sometimes he writes stuff that's just like, that's so wrong. That's so wrong. Do you understand how wrong that is? And it was when he started advocating a fully federal model with a proper English Parliament and so on. And a colleague of mine actually took him up on this and wrote to him about that. We haven't heard back from him yet, but this person just points out essentially what I've said, that federalism is only going to work where the parties involved want it to work. And as sure as I live and breathe, the Nationalists would accept any new powers with ill grace. Ill grace, that's a good phrase. And see it as a huge step towards total separation. And I assure you that even after independence, God forbid, they would still blame England for everything. Another person who sees exactly what I'm pointing out there as well. Another thing working against this is the huge disparity in size. And then this person goes on to say that here in Scotland, we who believe in the UK are up against one large, highly motivated party, while the Unionists, even though we outnumber them, are divided into three, as this person says, unimpressive parties. Well, it would be nice if the British government showed more enthusiasm for the Union, and that's absolutely so true. And we wrote to Boris Johnson and we said to him, look, we've got 12 suggestions to strengthen the United Kingdom, and we put them there in our magazine Union Heart. 12 ways to strengthen the British Union. And you can see that on our website, aforceforgood.uk. But we go into that in really quite some depths, where we talk here about the so-called devolution settlement, which was wrongly instituted, because what happened was it spelled out what the devolved assemblies could not do, when what it should have done is spell out only what they could do. In other words, it devolved everything and it reserved one or two broad issues, when in fact what it should have done is reserved everything and devolved one or two issues that were specifically written down. Somebody's saying there, a federal model won't stop the United Kingdom from pulling in 4 different directions. It will only make it a lot worse. So it's not going to stop everything, John. You're absolutely correct when you say that there on Twitter. Anybody else with any comments on Twitter, please fire them in. If you're watching, Angela, good for the thumbs up. Thanks for that. Colin, good afternoon to you. Neil says Kim Jong Sturgeon, which is, that's certainly, some people would certainly say that, shall I say, diplomatically. Colin there is trying to say the children were politically motivated and they wanted to thank the First Minister as shameful and downright deceit. Absolutely, Colin. It is shameful and embarrassing. And the people who made that film and the parents who put their children up for that, you know, I'm telling you, you should be ashamed. I'm going to judge you on that. You should be ashamed. If you put your child up for that, that's please think again. Please think again. Because do you want that child, when that child grows up to be a Unionist, and they say, Mum, what on earth did you put me onto an SNP programme for? You know, you could be upsetting that child's mental balance for the rest of its life, because it will grow up to see the benefits of the Union, you know, and it's going to look back on its parents as like, well, you know, Mum, that was, you shouldn't have done that, you know. So what are you going to say to your child when your child gets to 21 and goes, what on earth am I doing here on Twitter? You know, this thing, you know, 17 years ago. Was this you, Mum? You know, they're going to be upset. So SNP parents, don't put your children up for that sort of activity. And you know what? Any kind of political thing, don't put your children up for. Even if it's a Unionist thing, don't put your children up for that. Okay, keep your children out of politics until they've got to the age where they understand what politics even is, or what Holyrood even is, or what a First Minister is, or what an individual really is. So that's my advice to SNP parents who are looking in, watching, and I do hope that you've learned something. SNP parents from that embarrassing show that SNP TV, euphemistically called STV, put out on Sunday. Anyway, let's move on from that. This is our Saturday street stall. We cannot be out there. We would be out there normally with our street stall in the great British city of Glasgow or in any other town or city throughout Scotland. We'll be getting back out there once Madam Sturgeon has deemed it appropriate to politically once she's deemed it allowable for Unionists to politically campaign. I mean, she's campaigning all the time, isn't she, on the telly, right? But once she's deemed us being able to get out there, we'll do that. Because we can't do it at the moment on pain of being arrested. We can't exercise our democratic rights on pain of being arrested. Isn't that a sad place to be? Anyway, hopefully that's going to change. Because we've got to look to the future with confidence and with hope and with positivity. And, you know, just that's something that I wanted just to mention is there's a lot of fear going around at the moment, and fear of various things and fear of the future. And that's not really how human beings should live. Human beings shouldn't live with fear for the future. Human beings should live just taking life as it comes and dealing with it and understanding that danger and the unknown is part of everyday activity. And there's quite a few that's coming out now. You know, that's a sort of blowback from this lockdown is people saying, look, this isn't the nature of life to fear. It's the nature of life to hope for the future. And Spiked Online is good at that. Brendan O'Neill, he talks well on that. I also saw a really good video interview, which I would recommend people watching, called How Fear Works, the Culture of Fear in the 21st Century. And it's an interview with the philosopher Frank Furedi, F-U-R-E-D-I, Furedi, who's written a book called How Fear Works. And he's interviewed by Peter Whittle. And it's the Peter Whittle programme, So What You're Saying Is. And it's sort of a 40-minute interview with the Furedi chap. And he's really insightful and really thoughtful on a lot of stuff. And he said something that really struck home to me. He said, think of a film, like a popular Hollywood film, that looks to the future with optimism. Is there such a film? And he could not name one. And that got me thinking, that's a good point, because all the films about the future are about breeding fear in our minds. Dystopian societies, panics, wars, aliens invading. And it's all like, is there films out there that are hopeful and positive about the future? And that made me think as well that as an organisation we need to ensure that we're always positive and hopeful about the future. And even though, of course, just as the nature of life, we have to contest the Scottish Nationalists because we believe philosophically they are wrong, we nevertheless must keep a very positive angle on everything. So if you want to see that interview with Frank Furedi, who makes an astonishing admission, actually. I did not know he was the founder of the Revolutionary Communist Party, would you believe? But he's now a small c traditional conservative. Anyway, incredibly interesting chap. Just go to YouTube and search for Culture of Fear in the 21st Century, and it's the Peter Whittle interview with him. So that was something that I really gained from this week, and it really added value to my life, I think, and made me think after I had watched it. And this is the great thing about YouTube, of course, is that we've got these things now, and even we've got this programme. When this is over, our fantastic team will download this and put it up on YouTube. This will be up on YouTube by Monday. The previous 8 programmes are out there already. Just search for Saturday Street Stall and we're top of the rankings. Our fantastic team will also put this on to an audio podcast, and we'll also cut bits of it and put bits of it up on Facebook and on Twitter in order to direct people to aforceforgood.uk. Question coming in there. Sending support to our Scottish Unionist friends from Northern Irish Unionists. Well, absolutely. We love to hear from the Northern Irish Unionists, and we will be staunch and true for me and you. Please believe us that Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales and England, staunch and true for each other in these times and going forward to strengthen and build the integrity of our wonderful United Kingdom. So we're on the street stall. We can't be there just now, so we're going to answer. Each week we answer a question that we would normally get, and we have heard all the questions. There's Derek saying the SNP treat their followers as imbeciles, bringing out children to reinforce their political aspirations. That's true. Somebody saying, David saying, worst care home mortality rate in UK. And then David's saying, propped up by the UK government, thankfully. Well, thankfully, imagine if this was happening and we weren't part of the Union. It would be absolute chaos. Absolute chaos. So, Remain tried Project Fear but ultimately failed. The UK will be a popular country to do business. It certainly will going forward. So yeah, the inferiority themes. The SNP have these inferiority themes which they constantly push. You know, they'll claim that Scotland, that we say, which we never do, that Scotland's too wee or too poor or too stupid. That's a really annoying one, because nobody's saying that except them. They're the ones that are saying that. We, as Unionists, believe the opposite. We believe that Scotland is big enough and rich enough and clever enough to share its wealth and to share its resources with all the other family members here on our islands. That's what we believe. But the SNP like to push these inferiority themes, and they like to make it seem that they almost talk as if, you know, they're admitting the inferiority, which is politically unbelievable. For example, Keith Brown, who I think is maybe still the deputy leader of the SNP, he said in a national, he goes, "Oh, we're just told to shut up and remember our place." That's how he described what he was referring to as Scots. I mean, what a degraded way to look at your fellow Scots, like we're just told to shut up. You know, no, we're not. Nobody's telling you to shut up, Keith, except you, you know. But it's a line which they use. It's like, poor little us, poor put upon us. Nobody's taken us seriously. Nobody's given us attention. So they must feel that there's a certain type of Scot that's attracted by that inferiority rhetoric, which is really sad. You know, as if there's a demographic out there that's wanting to be confirmed in its grievance, that's wanting to be confirmed in its grudge. And I would like to think that's not the case, but that's certainly how they do talk. Oh, we're being ignored. Nobody takes us seriously. Well, you see, here's the thing. When they say us, they mean the SNP. But because they think the SNP represents all of Scotland, they think it's all of Scotland. So when the SNP is ignored, they think all of Scotland's being ignored. When the SNP doesn't get its way, it thinks that all of Scotland is not getting its way. It's because they misidentified their party, the SNP, with everybody in Scotland, which is a kind of nationalist trait in a way, the party representing the people. So they see that in that sense, and that's why they make that mistake. That's why they have these inferiority themes, because they think that if the SNP's not getting its way, it means that Scotland's not getting its way, when all it in fact means is the SNP's not getting its way. But when the SNP gets its way, they don't go about saying, "Oh, the people of Scotland have got our way." No, they don't mention that when that happens. But when they lose a vote, say in Westminster, then they'll pretend that it's the people of Scotland who have suffered, when in fact it's just the SNP MPs who represent only a proportion of people in Scotland. So it's this confusion with the SNP and with Scottish people that leads them to play on these inferiority themes, which are really tiresome, and degrading actually to Scottish people, because they're the ones, the SNP are the ones who are talking about inferiority, not the British Unionists, who are proud Scots and proud British. Thanks for the flags, Joseph. Richard, what's she going to do? Sell seashells as a potential Scottish currency? Possibly. Do you know, coming up, this is our favourite part of the show, coming up this week in British history, because we love our British history, because it informs our present, which helps us to create our future. And there's been a lot going on this week in British history. Today is a national day, the 30th of May, of one of the 14 British overseas territories in Anguilla. And the Scottish Nationalists will say, no country ever voted against its own independence. Well, that's rubbish. Okay, we're gonna do a big article on that, actually, which is on our desk, which we're going to get to, because there's lots of countries who have behaved in such a way to stay part of the UK, and Anguilla is one of them, because the British actually joined it with St Kitts and Nevis and Anguilla into a combined territory, and the Anguillans didn't want that. They wanted direct rule from Britain, and this is back in 1967, and actually the Parachute Regiment had to go to Anguilla to restore order so that Anguilla could become a sovereign, self-determining colony within Britain, within the British political system. So Anguilla National Day today. So we like the Anguillans, and the Anguillans like Britain. We'll post on that, actually, because that's fascinating. That's a fascinating thing. Tomorrow, 31st, is the Battle of Jutland, which was the last big naval battle in the First World War, just off the coast of Denmark, Royal Navy versus the Imperial German fleet, where it was a kind of indecisive, really, an indecisive battle. Tomorrow as well is the day the Glasgow Cenotaph was unveiled by Field Marshal Douglas Haig. And if you go to the Glasgow Cenotaph, you'll see that during the First World War, Glasgow sent 200,000 men to the First World War, which is an astonishing number. The 1st of June last year was a Force for Good's Thin Red Line in Galashiels, where we stood up to them, and I know that I've got some Galashiels folk support us regularly, and some great folk there. AUOB, all under one banner, said 5,000, when in fact we counted them in at 2,122, and we always do that wherever that goes. 1st of June as well is the death of the Englishman who wrote the Sky Boat song. And we always like this little quirky thing, because the Sky Boat song, how does it go? Speed bonny boat like a bird on the wing, over the sea to sky, carry the lad that's born to be king, onward the sailors cry. That popular song created in the public imagination the romanticism of the Jacobites. And it was written by Sir Harold Edwin Bolton, 2nd Baronet of born in Charlton, Kent, And so we've got there an Englishman creating a piece of Scottish popular culture, which you actually see a lot. If you think of maybe Scotland's most iconic painting is The Monarch of the Glen. That was Sir Edwin Landseer who painted that, who was an Englishman. If you think of an iconic Scottish monument, which is the Robert the Bruce Monument in Bannockburn, that was Charles Pilkington, who created that one. who was an Englishman as well. And of course it works the other way, Scottish people creating iconic English things. We wrote an article about that, actually. It's called Our Social Union Depends on Our Political Union. And we pointed out to the extent to which people from England have influenced Scottish culture and people from Scotland have influenced English culture, to the point today where you can talk about a wider British culture, which we do all the time. Edward there saying, as others say, the SNP are a cult. That's sure. David saying many of them are brainwashed. Well, we would hope that many of them are able to see the truth and to hear the truth, and we're putting out the truth to help them in that regard. On the 2nd of June is the coronation of Her Majesty the Queen 67 years ago, and aren't we so lucky to be living in the Elizabethan age? You know, people will look back in history on the Elizabethan age, and we are presently living through it. So we are very blessed and very lucky to be living in the Elizabethan age. One of the world's greatest queen, really. She will go down in history. On the 2nd of June, this is a sad story. It was 16-year-old Jack Cornwell's death, and Jack was a sailor at the Battle of Jutland the day before, and he manned a gun on his own until he was fatally wounded, and he's called the Boy Cornwell, and he was on HMS Chester when he suffered his fatal wound, and he was given the VC, and he is buried in Manor Park Cemetery, and there's a monument to the war dead of Leytonstone, where he came from, in Coronation Gardens, and there's a Victoria Cross stone to him on the ground, which when we get a chance to get to London, we will pay a visit and take a photograph of. And apparently, according to Wikipedia, his public burial led to over 7 million children throughout the British Empire donating to his memorial fund, which sounds astonishing. 2nd of June, the Battle of Ridgeway, which is one of the foundational battles of Canada, when the British descended people in Canada fought against, believe it or not, a group called the Fenian Brotherhood at the Battle of Ridgeway, because the Fenian Brotherhood were New York City-based ragtags, basically, and they must have been a bit bonkers, because their idea was to invade Canada and take it over, and try to put pressure, therefore, on the United Kingdom to negotiate an independent Irish Republic, right? And this was in 1866, so these guys have always been at it, basically. And they kind of did quite well, but there wasn't enough of them, and the whole thing just kind of fell apart at the end of the day. But one of the soldiers who was there was a guy called Alexander Muir, who's from Lesmahago here in Scotland, and as a consequence of that, he wrote the Maple Leaf Forever, which is a kind of unofficial Canadian song, and we ourselves have paraphrased that into the Union Jack Forever. In days of yore, from Scotland's shore, James VI, our dauntless hero, came and created first the Union flag on Britain's fair domain. Here may it wave, our boast, our pride, and joined in love together, the thistle, shamrock, rose entwine, the Union Jack forever. And we went through his poem and paraphrased it to change it to a British poem rather than a Canadian one, and you'll see that on our website, aforceforgood.uk, and we've also, our video editor did a nifty little video of that poem as well, which is on our Facebook page and also on the page called the Union Jack Forever at aforceforgood.uk. And if you go there, please sign up to aforceforgood.uk/support. Give us your name, give us your email, because we really do need your names and your emails to keep you in touch with what's going on. And then on the 3rd of June, that was our first ever A Force for Good counter-presence against the Scottish Nationalists in George Square back in 2017. And there was only 11 of us, 11 standing strong on the thin red line, And it was the first time we did it, but we realised we had to do it because we could not allow these people to think that they owned the streets of Scotland. We had to stand up proudly for what we believe in. And we've been doing that ever since at every single one of these Scottish nationalist marches. And if you want to join us, make sure you contact us at forceforgood.uk/support, or send us an email, contact@forceforgood.uk. But we need to hear from you guys. And then 4th of June, one of the founders of the modern British Army was born, a fellow called Garnet Wolseley, who was Irish, actually, Anglo-Irish, and he became one of the most influential British soldiers. This is between 1833 and 1913. In Burma, the Crimean War, the Indian Mutiny, China, Canada at the Battle of Ridgeway that I just spoke about there. Wolseley was at the Battle of Ridgeway, looking to see how the Canadians were doing, defending themselves against the Fenian Brotherhood, so-called. And the great Scottish poet William McGonagall even wrote a poem to Sir Garnet Wolseley, and I want to quote it because I like the last verse. And he's talking about the Battle of Tel al-Kebir, which was a British victory against Egyptians in 1882. And he goes, "Oh, it must have been a glorious sight to see Sir Garnet Wolseley in the thickest of the fight, in the midst of shot and shell and the cannon's roar, whilst the dead and the dying lay weltering in their gore." Lay weltering in their gore. What a fantastic line. And there's a statue of him in Horse Guards Parade. Garnet Wolseley, that is, not William McGonagall. Although there should be a statue of William McGonagall. He was a great British patriot. And this is one of our theories, is like he gets knocked through the history. Oh, rubbish poet, blah, blah, blah. Is that just because he was like, all his poems were like for Britain, for the Queen, for the Empire? Interesting. There might have been a political thing there and putting him down for his obviously quirky poetry. And maybe it was just sheer snobbery. I don't know. And then on the 5th of June, HMS Hampshire was lost off the coast of Orkney in, again, the First World War, with 737 men lost their lives, including Field Marshal Lord Kitchener, he of Your Country Needs You fame. He was killed in that as well. So we'll be writing about all of that on our social media platforms, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. And we have fantastic social media pages. And I want to thank the social media curators who do help us on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram. You folks, you are stars. And without you, we can't do what we're doing, because I'm one man here, but behind here, we've got a team on Facebook, we've got a team on Twitter, we're going to have a team on YouTube, and we'll have a video editing team as well. So we really, really do depend upon you guys. Please go to forceforgood.uk/support. And one thing before I end here, I read the National because so that you don't have to, and I noticed this on Wednesday. And this is the Scottish Independence Foundation, and they're saying that they've raised £165,000 for 130 projects, Scottish nationalist projects, and they've listed them all down here. That's very interesting. And that 165,000 has been raised in about the last 18 months. So these guys are sorted as far as money's concerned. I mean, they are really putting their hands in their pockets. So if you think you've got any value from this, please do go to forceforgood.uk/donate to. That's numeral 2. Or you might want to go to forceforgood/union-supporters, where you can donate monthly. But there's Arthur says, watching you from Thailand. Absolutely fantastic. Charles says, good man, keep up the good work. Derek says, thanks for reinforcing our united ambitions. And there's Duncan. I'll give you a wave there, Duncan. Kieran, we don't hear this in Westminster. You are the voice of reason. Thank you very much, Kieran. That's a really nice comment. And that's a really nice comment. Sammy's given us a wave there, waving back to Sammy. Good man. It's a really nice comment, and because we appreciate when people appreciate our work, and you can show your appreciation, you can show your love for us by keeping in touch with us and going to aforceforgood.uk/support, put in your name and your email. And if you want one of these nifty little Union flag, Union Heart, A Force for Good flag badges, which is that badge there, that design there, then go to aforceforgood.uk, look along the top where it says shop, and click on that, and you'll see this for sale. This is new. This just came into the office this week, and it is the business. It is the bee's knees. It's completely original as well. So folks, it's now 2 o'clock. I want to say thank you so much to everybody who's been watching on Facebook and on Twitter. We're going to get this up on YouTube and onto our Facebook platforms this coming week. I wish you all a great weekend. I hope that you all have a really nice day out in the sun. Just get out there in the sun. Greg, the UK government's paying for the furlough. Absolutely, absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring this to an end. It just remains for me to say, as Richard has just said, they're all for one and one for all. God bless the United Kingdom, and God save the Queen. Thank you.